Danielle Colby has finally broken her silence, and what she just revealed about Frank Fritz is sending shockwaves through American Pickers fans everywhere. After years of speculation, rumors, and unanswered questions, Danielle is speaking out about the dramatic fallout between Frank and Mike Wolf. And no, this isn't just behind-the-scenes gossip. It's her side of the story, filled with raw emotion, personal truths, and long-awaited answers. Did she choose a side? Was there more to Frank's exit than we were told? Let's hit the gas and dive into the real origin story of Danielle Colby, the badass backbone of American Pickers. Before she became a fan favorite on screen, Danielle wasn't chasing fame. She was just a loyal friend helping Mike Wolf and Frank Fritz chase junkyard dreams. When the show first aired in 2010, the spotlight was on Mike and Frank, two Iowa buddies, cruising back roads, digging through dusty barns and unearthing buried treasure. Meanwhile, Danielle? She held it down in LeClaire, Iowa, running the heart of the operation, antique archaeology. She wasn't just answering phones, she was the engine behind the madness. Tracking leads, organizing finds, and making sure their wild road adventures turned into serious business. With her edgy tattoos, no-nonsense attitude, and magnetic personality, Danielle quickly stole the show. But don't be fooled, she wasn't just there for flair. She was the glue holding the entire operation together. Mike was the dreamer, the big-picture guy obsessed with preserving history. Frank was the quiet technician, focused on the intricate value of every dusty relic. They'd butt heads over rusty signs and antique motorcycle parts, but it was that dynamic that made viewers fall in love. And Danielle? She was the one laughing on the other end of the phone, playing referee and keeping the boys grounded from hundreds of miles away. Those early days, just three passionate junkers, a white van, and the open road. Mike and Frank were the treasure hunters. Danielle was the anchor. Every time they called in with a new find, be it a beat-up bike or a gas station sign from the 50s, Danielle was there, ready to make it shine. The fame storm hit fast, and Danielle Colby was right in the eye of it. At first, fans came to antique archaeology just to peek around. But before long, they weren't asking about the antiques, they were asking for her. Danielle had become a star in her own right, and the shop turned into a full-blown tourist attraction. What started as a fun roadside gig was now a phenomenon, and with that kind of spotlight, things were bound to get messy. Danielle could feel the shift. Sure, it was exciting, fans pouring in, phones ringing off the hook, people snapping selfies and pointing to old relics on the walls. But underneath all that buzz, cracks were starting to show. She'd always played the middle mic, the visionary, always charging ahead with big ideas. Frank, the slow and steady guy, digging into the details. And Danielle? She was the calm between their storms. She knew how to talk Mike down from the clouds and check in on Frank when his energy dipped. It felt like family, but even families have fault lines. Looking back, the signs were there. Frank would sometimes get real quiet. Mike would push a little too hard. Nothing explosive, just enough to hint that the harmony wouldn't last forever. Then, boom, American Pickers exploded. Mike had been chasing the dream for years, dragging Frank through barns with a handheld cam, pitching networks that kept slamming the door. But in 2010, the History Channel finally said yes, and 3.1 million people showed up for episode 1. Overnight, Danielle was in the middle of a media circus. People flooded the shop. They wanted autographs, selfies, stories, anything to touch a piece of the show. Danielle played the part with grace, pointing out a neon sign Mike found, laughing about Frank's fire extinguisher treasure, and holding the operation together like only she could. But behind that smile, it was chaos. She had to bring in more help just to keep things from falling apart. Meanwhile, Mike and Frank were out living the road life 250 days a year, town after town, junkyard after junkyard. Mike thrived in the spotlight. He opened a shop in Nashville, packed with fans and flashing bulbs. Frank, not so much. He kept it low-key in Illinois, far from the screaming crowds. Danielle saw it all, how fame pulled them in different directions. Mike's the fire, she'd joke. Frank's the smoke. But behind every call, every pick, every mile, Danielle heard it in their voices. The exhaustion, the pressure, the cost of turning a simple passion into a national obsession. The magic was still there, but so was the weight. And for Danielle, it was only the beginning of a storm she couldn't ignore. It all started with a spark, and it worked on TV. Danielle Colby wasn't just the girl in the background. She was the heartbeat of the shop. Her tattoos, her funky burlesque outfits, that fearless vibe, fans were hooked. Every time she posted a photo, the internet lit up. "You're the coolest," they'd scream in the comments. Danielle loved it. Sharing odd shop finds like one of Frank's creepy old dolls turned her page into a fan magnet. The long days didn't feel so long when the love poured in. She had her own spotlight, and she owned it. But over time, the energy changed. The show wasn't just about treasure hunting anymore, it was a production. There were schedules, crews, money talks. The gritty adventure turned into a polished product. By 2015, episodes were costing $250,000 more than in the early days. Mike Wolf was chasing hits, demanding every find be a showstopper. Frank, he just wanted to keep it real. Danielle would hear them argue, sometimes Mike pushing for the next big score, Frank pushing back. She didn't get involved. She focused on her lane, on the shop. She liked being the calm in the chaos, the one they could always count on. Despite the tension, the show was huge. Millions watched every week. Sometimes Danielle would sit in the back room, just soaking it in how they'd gone from a small shop in Iowa to a global phenomenon. It felt surreal. But deep down, she knew fame always comes with a price. It gives you everything, and then it starts taking back. She didn't know what was coming, but she felt it in her bones. Something was shifting. So, she did what she always did, kept the shop humming, kept her head down, and braced herself. Because trouble was in the air. And Danielle Colby, she was ready. By 2017, Danielle Colby could feel it in her gut. Something was off. American Pickers was still a rating smash, but behind the cameras, the cracks were showing. She wasn't out on the road much anymore, but she was still the heartbeat of the home base. And she heard everything. Mike Wolf was on fire, burning the candle at both ends. He'd called Danielle from Nashville, buzzing with ideas about expanding the shop, chasing bigger finds, leveling up every episode. "We need to wow them," he'd say. But beneath all that ambition, she could hear its stress, pressure, a man obsessed with keeping the empire alive. Frank Fritz, on the other hand, was fading. He didn't call much, and when he did, he sounded hollow, tired, quiet. Danielle knew he'd been battling Crohn's disease, and it was taking a toll. He didn't like talking about it, but the crew whispered the truth. Frank was missing days, looking rough and struggling to keep up. Fans still poured into the shop, asking the same question, "Where's Frank?" Danielle smiled, kept it vague. "He's out picking," she'd say. But inside, she was worried. Mike's calls got more intense. Frank's got shorter. The distance between them, growing fast. Then came the day Frank snapped. He called her from a shoot, angry and bitter. He's turning this into a circus. He barked about Mike. Danielle tried to calm him. He's just excited. But Frank wasn't having it. He huffed and hung up. She never told Mike. It wasn't her war to fight, but that moment haunted her. They used to laugh together. Now, it was tension, silence, and separate paths. The show looked perfect on screen jokes, banter, and buried treasures. But Danielle knew better. It was all edited, all smoke and mirrors. That's not the whole story, she'd think, watching episodes play back like nothing was wrong. So, she kept the shop running, smiling for fans, holding it all together. But deep down, she missed the real American pickers, the camaraderie, the fun, the friendship. And she wondered if chasing TV gold had cost them something they'd never get back. By 2019, the writing was on the wall. Something big was coming, and it wasn't good. Frank Fritz's health was spiraling. He was missing more shoots, and the crew was left scrambling to fill the gaps. Meanwhile, Mike Wolf was still charging full steam ahead, determined to keep the show rolling. But Danielle Colby could hear the cracks in his voice, the long sighs, the quiet frustration. "Wish Frank was here," he'd mumble on the phone. She never knew what to say. American Pickers had become a machine, and machines don't stop, even when people fall apart. Danielle felt it in her bones. Trouble was brewing, and it was bigger than her. She just hoped Mike and Frank would fix it before it exploded. But in March 2020, the wheels finally came off. Frank Fritz's last episode aired, and just like that, he was gone. No farewell, no send-off, gone. Mike broke the news with a late-night phone call. His voice was low. "Frank's done," he said. Danielle asked why. Mike didn't say much. "He's just not coming back." She didn't press. She could tell Mike was heartbroken, even if he didn't show it. Danielle had seen it coming, but it still hit like a punch to the gut. Frank had been there from day one. That goofy laugh. His love for the weird and wonderful. Now the van was rolling without him, and something just felt off. Later, Frank opened up to the Sun, saying he hadn't talked to Mike in 2 years. "My back's messed up," he said, and Mike didn't even call. Danielle didn't fully buy it. She knew Mike had moved shoots around for Frank when he was sick. But she also understood Frank had been in pain, emotionally and physically, and maybe what he needed was more than a rescheduled shoot. She never called Frank. That wasn't her way. She figured he'd reach out if he wanted to. He never did. Then the internet exploded. Why did Frank leave? Did Mike ditch him? The fans wanted answers. Danielle stayed silent. She posted vintage finds, smiling through it all, dodging the storm. She wasn't going to pick sides. Mike had always been her buddy, but Frank was too. And losing him from the show? It stung. She didn't ask about Frank. It was too raw, too real. And the truth? It was messy. Frank had been through hell 17 hospital visits in 2 years, then rehab in 2020 for alcohol. Danielle heard about it from the crew. She didn't judge. Pain changes people. She remembered him once, laughing over a bizarre find like a kid in a candy store. That guy was fading, and it broke her heart. Mike kept the cameras rolling. New faces came in. The show looked fine on TV, maybe even great. But to Danielle, it wasn't the same. Danielle Colby had her own chaos to juggle. The world was unraveling in 2020, the pandemic upending everything, including the shop. Still, she kept the doors open when she could, masked up, talking to fans through a pane of glass like a scene from a post-apocalyptic movie. But one question kept coming over and over again. "Where's Frank?" "He's taking a break," she'd say with a forced smile. Vague, safe. Not a lie, but definitely not the whole truth. Then came Mike's post. A public farewell. "I'll miss Frank." "He's my brother," he wrote. Danielle read it in silence and nodded. She knew Mike meant it. But Frank's words, they cut deeper. He'd told The Sun he felt like a sidekick, like Mike was the star, and he was just background noise. That hurt. Danielle understood both sides. Mike was the visionary, the big dream guy chasing giant scores. Frank was the down-to-earth picker, the man who found joy in a rusted gas sign or a dusty toy tractor. He was the one fans connected with. Danielle didn't believe Mike pushed Frank out, but she also couldn't deny how easily someone like Frank could feel left behind. The show had become a beast, and Frank just couldn't keep up. So, Danielle did what she always did, kept her head down, kept the shop alive, kept dancing. The van wasn't rolling for Frank anymore, and she had no choice but to roll with it. Online, the rumors flew: money, ego, jealousy. Let them guess. She knew better. Both men were hurting. And the truth? There was no villain. Just a bond that hit its breaking point. In July 2021, Danielle Colby had enough. For months, fans had been hammering her with questions, demanding she pick a side after Frank Fritz vanished from American Pickers. Was she Team Mike or Team Frank? She hated the drama, the rumors, the noise. So she did what any modern woman would do, grabbed her phone, snapped a selfie with Mike Wolfe, and dropped it on Instagram. "Out on the road again with my best friend and big brother, whom I support fully and stand behind." Boom! That was her line in the sand. But Danielle wasn't just backing Mike, she had something to say about Frank too. And it got real fast. "I'm truly saddened for the loss of Frank on the show," she wrote. "I'm incredibly sad for his struggles. I have personally watched everything over the last decade. It wasn't some shady feud or tabloid-style betrayal. It was pain, health issues, maybe more. And fans were shook. What struggles?" they asked. She didn't spill details. She wasn't here for gossip. Then she hit everyone with the line that stuck. "Frank caused so much pain for himself that it has been hard to watch." She wasn't mad. She was heartbroken. "I truly hope Frank receives all the help he needs to become well after years of being unwell." It wasn't a diss, it was concern, compassion, exhaustion. She'd watched a friend spiral, and this was her truth. Danielle said the only reason she spoke out was because the tabloids kept twisting her silence into drama. "My words are being taken out of context in tabloid rags because they can't interview me." So she set the record straight. No interviews, no gossip, just her words. Some fans praised her for being raw and honest. Others demanded more. Danielle didn't care. She wasn't dropping every detail. She'd been in the trenches with both Mike and Frank for years. In the end, she stood with Mike, but never turned her back on Frank. This wasn't a tell-all. It was a glimpse, just enough for people to connect the dots. After that, Danielle went back to work, buzzing around the shop, answering questions with a smile and a quick "check my post." Mike kept picking, Frank stayed silent, and Danielle? She stayed grounded. She said her piece, cleared the air, and walked away. No feud, no scandal. Just quiet fallout and a friend hurting behind the scenes. After Danielle Colby's powerful 2021 post, things went quiet. But silence didn't mean peace. Frank Fritz was no longer on American Pickers, and Danielle found herself witnessing the slow, painful fallout. She kept her distance online, choosing not to fan the flames, but behind the scenes, she had seen it all: Mike stepping up, Frank struggling with his health. And it was never as simple as the rumors made it seem. Months after Frank's passing, Danielle decided it was time. No drama. No sensational headlines. Just the truth. Sitting down for a straightforward interview, she revealed what she had kept to herself for so long. Frank's body had given out. She had watched it happen over the years: Crohn's disease, constant pain, repeated setbacks. This wasn't a story of betrayal. It was the slow unraveling of a man's ability to keep going. She spoke plainly. Frank loved picking more than anyone, but by 2018, he was in and out of hospital 17 times in just 2 years. Mike did what he could to help. He rescheduled shoots, waited between hospital stays, tried to make it work. But Frank's health wouldn't let him return. Danielle remembered hearing his pain in phone calls and watching Mike scramble to hold everything together. Frank didn't leave because he was bitter. He left because he couldn't physically do it anymore. Then she turned to Mike. Danielle made it clear that Mike had stood by Frank through the hardest moments. After Frank suffered a stroke, Mike stepped up. He covered bills, showed up at the hospital, brought old debts to be cleared, took care of the things Frank couldn't. He never made a public statement, but he didn't need to. His actions spoke louder than words. By sharing this, Danielle put the feud rumors to rest. Mike wasn't the villain life was. She reflected on the early days, remembering how different they had been. Frank was the quiet one, always looking for small treasures. Mike was the dreamer, chasing the big scores. Together, they worked. Together, they built something special. But fame changed things. The long hours, the pressure, the expectations. And in the end, it wasn't anger or betrayal that split them apart. It was Frank's declining health. Danielle wasn't angry. She wasn't sad. She was just ready to tell the truth. Fans had hoped for a dramatic falling out, a fight behind the scenes. But there was no juicy scandal. Just a man who ran out of strength and a friend who did everything he could to keep things together. Danielle had hinted at this back in 2021. But back then, it wasn't the right time. Now, with Frank gone, she felt it was. She wasn't chasing attention, she was offering closure. The interview was brief, but it hit hard. American Pickers was their legacy: two friends chasing junk, finding stories, and creating something that still lives on today. She didn't cry. She didn't give a long speech. She just told the story, straight and honest. There was no big fight, just real life, and she was proud of them both. Danielle got up and walked away. Mike kept picking. Frank's part in the story was over. And now, after years of questions, the truth finally had a voice: hers.